Hi everyone and welcome back to Women vs. Everything. This is season 1, episode 4. I'm Jess.
And I'm Grace.
And this is a podcast about women who overcame adversity in the face of oppression. And each episode, one of us researches a particular amazing woman from any period of history, and the other researches the context of the time and the place where she was living, and we sew it all together on air and hope it makes sense.
Just for listeners, at the moment we only release an episode every 2 weeks, so we're coming to you from the past a little bit this week, and tomorrow is our big drop where we're dropping our first 3 episodes all in one go on various platforms. Not iTunes, because it's been really impossible to get stuff on iTunes and we're waiting. That should happen in the next week or so. But yeah, Greg and I had to break the mainframe a bit and do some tricks to get anything up on iTunes.
Yeah. So listeners who use iTunes, this is how much we love you, that we've gone to all of this effort. And when I say we, I entirely mean Grace and Greg, because I have done none of this.
So yeah, I'm really nervous and excited about it.
Yeah, it is really exciting. But by the time everyone is hearing this, they will hopefully have heard our first 3 episodes and can tell us what they think.
Yeah, and can also hopefully at that point we'll be like, we're so used to podcasting, we don't care what you think.
We know we're amazing.
Yeah, we upload episodes all over the place, like it's nothing.
Speaking of which, if people want to tell us we're amazing, where can they get in contact with us?
Ooh, well, you can follow us on Instagram. We have already got over 100 followers. Yay!
Amazing.
I know. There are mostly people that you and I know, Jess, who I've spammed requests to. But yeah, we're Women vs. Everything on that. And we have a Twitter that you're in charge of.
Yes, we are at WV Everything Pod on Twitter. And we also have a newly launched Patreon account, which is patreon.com/Women vs. Everything.
Oh, how exciting!
Yes! So please give us money so we can get nice fancy audio equipment and keep paying our lovely editor and things.
Yeah, increase the frequency.
More of us. Yes, always a good thing.
More of our opinions. And also I think we were talking about getting an illustrator or a graphic designer as one of our financial goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So every donation that we get will help make the podcast better and will help us to hire and pay more awesome people to help us out as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to do more giving back. Last week we spoke about putting a link to donate to Black Lives Matters on our Instagram. And, I would love us to get to the point where we can make regular donations to these causes. Yeah, putting our money where our mouth is, literally.
Yeah, so much. We would love that. So basically, give us money and help support awesome feminist media and causes that we should all care about.
And also we have womenvseverything@gmail.com. If you want to contribute to the show by either sending us your basic bitch gratitude list things or or your hometown heroine. Tell us about a cool badass woman that is living in your town or you're related to. Who's doing amazing work that might not otherwise get international attention. Because she deserves it!
Yes. Which I was meant to do today, and I didn't because I got so caught up in researching the topic. So I'm sorry, I will have one for next time.
That's it. I mean, I think it's understandable to forget things with the way everything is on fire this week. So, how is coronavirus fucking up your life this week, Jess?
Yeah, it's an ongoing saga of fun, isn't it? Well, I mean, I've said this before, I'm very lucky because I get to work from home and I'm freelance. So in a sense, it sort of doesn't impact my day-to-day all that much. But I'm going absolutely stir crazy. I'm so fed up. I'm so isolated here. I'm here with my partner, which is really, really lovely. And I know a lot of people don't have that, so I don't take that for granted. But I miss my friends. I miss my family. I want to see my parents. I want to see my nephew, who I have only been able to see twice since he was born last year. And yeah, I want to go to parties. I want to go to London and see my best friend. I want to just all of these things I want to do, silly things as well. I never realised how much I would miss things like just sitting in a coffee shop and writing. And anyway, just kind of fed up, really, I think is an assessment this week. How about you? How are you doing?
Well, before we talk about me, I just want to note that Jess has something really nice to celebrate this week.
I had an article published in The Independent this week, which is my first national byline, and it's the biggest byline that I've had in my career so far, so it's really exciting. And I got to write about bisexual visibility, which is an issue that is super close to my heart. So you can find the link to that in my Instagram, which is at JessAmyWrites. Pro tip, don't read the comments, because I did, and I wish I hadn't.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done. I mean, so excited for you. It's amazing. And what a great topic to cover as well.
Yeah, I was really pleased that they took it. It's been a topic I've wanted to write about for a while, and the last time that kind of a big name celebrity person in the public eye came out as bi, I tried to pitch it then and I couldn't place it then. So this time I thought, okay, I'll try again, see what happens. And I think I'm a real journalist now. Anyway, enough about me. How are you?
I got some amazing cards in the post from my friend in England.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, I ordered one for my mom's birthday. Her Etsy is Kosh Crafting, and she's on the social medias. But she sent me a few free cards as well, and they're all vagina themed.
Amazing.
So I got one. It just says, love your vagina. And she sent me other ones which are like, my uterus is cuterus. And it's like a pattern made out of all different period products. And I don't know if these are ones she's made or not herself. But I love them so much. And it's like, this is such a thing of like, you know, a few Valentines ago, one of my good friends gave me a card that was like, it was like a TripAdvisor review for my vagina. And it was like 5 stars would come again, you know, like. And then really soon after I moved back, I got like this beautiful calligraphy thing that says awesome cunt queen from another friend. So one of the things I want to do this year is move out and get my own place. And I'm just so excited for it to be covered in vulva representation and memorabilia. Oh, I had the funniest conversation with Greg as well, because there was just loads of trouble getting our episodes, getting our profile even up on iTunes. And it just kept saying like, oh, the image is wrong, the image is the wrong size. So Greg cut our image in such a way it fitted, but one of the, you know, women on the image is now cut in half, you know? And I was just like, yeah, die bitch, you know, our first sacrifice to capitalism.
Amazing. So, this week it was Grace's turn to choose the person that we were going to talk about, and it was my turn to research the background information. The places and time periods we're looking at included Barbados in the late 1940s, Brooklyn and Long Island in the early to mid-1960s, and then New York City going into the 70s. And some of the themes we were talking about include Black womanhood, unpaid labour, motherhood, utility workers issues, and Black women as victims of crime. So Grace, do you want to start out by telling us if there are any particular trigger warnings for this episode that people need to be aware of?
All of them. Trigger warning for rape and murder, and content notice for racism, for systemic racism. Yeah.
So, hit me with it. Who are we talking about today?
So, today, I'm so geeked out about this because it's bringing my true crime interests together with this podcast. Today's episode is about the women who helped bring the serial killer, the Grim Sleeper, to justice. Specifically, Margaret Prescod, an activist, author, journalist, and radio host, and she was the founder of the Black Coalition fighting back serial murders. And she's still alive.
Wow, okay. So this is a person I've never heard of, and a case I've never heard of, so tell me more.
So I'm going to mention 2 other women in this story, but I wanted to focus on Margaret Prescod originally, because I think this is going to happen a lot, where we research one person and then along the way it's like, oh my god, and then there's all these other women that could do episodes on their own as well, but they're worth mentioning in this. Yeah, my sources are Wikipedia, a documentary Margaret is in called Tales of the Grim Sleeper, which was nominated for an Oscar. And the Black Coalition fighting back serial murderers.net and globalwomenstrike.net have their own websites. So she was born in Barbados, and she emigrated to the United States in 1962 as a teenager, and there's not a lot of info about her early years. So what kind of a background would she have come from?
Okay, yeah. So Barbados, of course, we're talking about late 1940s. We're talking about immediately post-World War II. So Barbados was a British colony in that time. It was a British colony from 1625 until 1966. And ever since then, it's been a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy. So in the early 1940s, there was progress being made towards a more democratic government in Barbados. In 1942, something called the exclusive income qualification was lowered and women were given the right to vote. So that's relatively late compared to a lot of other places. Women only got the vote in 1942. And as far as the kind of situation for women at that time, there was a real push for increased educational and job opportunities for women in the 60s. But prior to that, it was very much centred around this idea that a woman's role was to be a mother, and that her economic status was dependent on that in many ways. And women were expected to take responsibility for the home, to teach homemaking skills to their daughters, while men were expected to provide income for their families and work outside the home. So it was very traditional gender roles in that way, as of course a lot of places were at that time.
Yeah, I think, I don't have an exact date of birth for Margaret, but I think, that's what she grew up in. And there's this thing of like women being subservient, but there's also a lot of rebellion going on. And I think she really picked up on that. Yeah, like I said, she immigrated to the United States in 1962, but she was only a teenager. And I wonder if there was any overlap with Lorraine Hansberry, who we talked about in the last episode.
I guess there would be, because I think she died in 1964, if I'm remembering that correctly from last week.
1965. The earliest there is an entry about her is 1962, which is when she emigrated. And I do wonder if that's to do with something like erasing women's ages, the invisibility of women's ages. It's, it's because she's still alive, and it's like, a lady never reveals her age, because she moved to New York, Brooklyn. Within 2 weeks of moving to the United States, she was in a picket line protesting against a medical center in Brooklyn that would not employ Black people. The fact she was there within 2 weeks of moving to the United States just shows she was no stranger to the rebellion that was going on in Barbados, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a huge part of what was happening in America at that time. Obviously, it was really the 1960s when the civil rights movement, of course, it had been going for some time, but it was really in the 60s when it started gaining a lot more traction and taking off a lot more.
Yeah, she attended the Long Island University for undergraduate studies, and she started a course at the Teachers College, Columbia University, but left to work in remedial teaching for adults. But kind of after that, she was just increasingly more visible and active in the civil rights movements. So do you want to tell us a bit about what that was like in the 60s?
Yeah, absolutely. There was civil rights action and protests and things going on all over the United States at this point. In New York in particular, at this point, there were lots and lots of battles being fought against discrimination in things like housing, employment, education. There was an organisation called the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, and the Brooklyn chapter was considered to be one of the most dynamic and creative chapters of that. It was a national organisation, but it had different regional chapters. And they staged a number of successful campaigns around things like integrating schools, desegregating housing, creating job opportunities for African Americans, improving sanitation and living conditions, particularly in impoverished neighbourhoods. A lot of things were happening so far as sort of equality and trying to fight against racial segregation and things. So I found this interesting fact that this area called East New York, which is part of Brooklyn, was overwhelmingly white in 1960. By 1966, it was overwhelmingly Black. And that was because of something that real estate firms were doing called blockbusting, which essentially involved flooding the area with scare literature, scare propaganda, essentially, and trying to frighten white homeowners in that area into selling their properties.
Yes, we covered that last week as well. And, it's just sickening. So this is a woman who's still alive today, and she experienced that.
Right, absolutely. If anyone needs a reminder of how recent all of this is, there are people who lived through this who are still around.
Like, I want to cheer for all this amazing work she's doing, and I'm really sad that work had to be done, you know?
Yeah.
In the 70s, she started to focus her activism on initiatives that looked to improve the welfare of mothers, and at the time she was working as a school teacher in New York City. There was this global movement called Wages for Housework, and it was started by Selma James, who I believe is a British feminist, and again, someone we'll probably cover in an upcoming episode. It was in the 70s. It included lots of lesbian and sex worker groups, a lot of like non-conforming women. It focused on the right to work less, the right to have or not have children rather than just abortion, equal pay for all, free community-controlled nurseries and childcare, and an end to price rises in those areas, the right to guaranteed income for women, men, and wages for housework. So under that kind of umbrella, Margaret Prescod started Black Women for Wages for Housework, and she co-founded it. And that focused on specific issues of Black and Third World women, including calling for reparations for slavery, imperialism, and neo-colonialism. Yeah, that's just so fucking amazing.
Right.
So, yeah, this carried on in New York. So when you think about it, in the 60s, we just had, like, can we not segregate Black people in accessing services? And then Margaret is straight on to, give us wages for housework. It's so radical.
I love it so much.
Yeah, and then this like Black Women for Wages for Housework branched out as well internationally, like in London and Bristol and other parts of America, and it had major success at the first congressionally mandated women's conference in Houston, Texas in 1977. There was a lot of working with Beulah Sanders and Johnny Tillman, the Black women who led the National Welfare Rights Organization, and they got the conference to agree that welfare payments should be called a wage, and they believed this helped to delay welfare cuts by 20 years.
That is amazing. I love that so much. That is brilliant.
And so this movement, the Wages for Housework movement, also came about in, I think it was like 2011. There was a national and international women's strike where it was like urging women to go on strike on International Women's Day. It's still in existence today. And then
sadly never seems to have broadly taken off as a thing.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, all of this is still issues we're arguing about every day. You know, I think now there's a lot of literature and acknowledgement coming out about emotional labour, invisible labour in the home that women are carrying. Yeah. And, you know, it's just the sneakiness of the capitalist system that it was like originally the way the family would function is because one person was at home full time and another person earned enough wages to make that happen. And they've just not increased salaries to compete with inflation to a point where now both people need to work, but there's still all this work involved in running a home and raising children.
Yeah.
And it's women who are picking up that gap.
Yeah, totally.
So in 1980, she also wrote Black Women, Bringing It All Home, which was the first book that explored the relationship between women, immigration, and race. And she then moved to Los Angeles, where she became involved with the Utility Workers Union of America.
Oh, I learned a little bit. I looked that... that was not a sentence. They came up in my research briefly, but tell me a little bit more about that.
She was involved with them, and she delivered evidence at both like Democratic and Republican Party annual conventions, but she still looked to involve women's unwaged work in consideration of economic analysis. Yeah, I didn't really look it up massively either. Like, I don't think there was anything when I clicked on it. It just said, these careers are types of utility workers that can be in the union. So did I not tell you to research LA, Los Angeles?
No.
Shit.
We got to New York in the 70s, but we didn't go any further than that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. Well, this is where the crime bit kicks in. And a lot of the trigger This is where the crime bit kicks in and a lot of the trigger warnings.
Okay.
So, I mean, the background that I have as part of this story is that it was not good. We're talking about the massive crack cocaine epidemic, which, I mean, that could be a whole other episode about how, there's now evidence that crack cocaine was introduced to Black poor areas. So it was a time when families were torn apart and dealers were fighting over turf, and there was lots of petty theft, high murder rate. And at the time, there was more people thought to be employed in the crack cocaine dealing system than in all three major employers in the area combined.
Wow. Okay, so sorry, what period are we talking about here? Are we still in the 70s or are we into the 80s at this point?
We're in the 80s now.
Okay.
Big hair, shoulder pads.
All that good stuff.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love the 80s. In the mid-80s, so the LAPD became aware of an apparent serial killer who was targeting Black women who were chronic drug users, addicts, and street sex workers. And it's pretty horrific. If, it was referred to as prostitute killings.
Oh god, that's horrible.
Yeah. The numbers are all over the place in my research for this as to how many, I get numbers between 13 to 20, and it's all over the place, but it was many. And there was also, as well as the kind of bodies they were finding to suggest it was a serial killer, there was also just hundreds of women of colour who were, addicts and sex workers that were missing, found dead and just murdered in ways that didn't fit in with this person's MO. So the serial killer's MO was strangulation, shooting by the same type of gun, rape, and people also started reporting the same car was being spotted around the place and time these murders happened. Later, there was paperwork found that in the 80s, these were categorised by the LAPD as NHI crimes, which stands for no humans involved.
Excuse me, what?
No humans involved, because it was just Black women who were sex workers and addicts.
Wow. I have no words.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my god.
Oh, and I just want to say, my favourite podcast, My Favourite Murder, is also a source for this. So if you're a true crime fanatic like me, I really recommend checking out their episode, because we're going to focus more on Margaret in this, because following a press conference, the LAPD was strongly criticised for their failure to alert the community that there's a serial killer basically around. So Margaret Prescod and other community activists held weekly protests outside the LAPD's headquarters to pressure the department into forming a task force. And she was just, if you look at this documentary, The Grim Sleeper, she was outside supermarkets, community centres, just handing out flyers of these missing women and saying, do you know there is a serial killer in this area? He is targeting women of colour who might be sex workers or addicts, but they're also just women who are walking through these parts of the city. Sometimes they were opportunistic. And she's just trying to raise awareness, take care of yourselves. Yeah, so she accused the LAPD of an indifference to the deaths to the women, which the LAPD denied, but we will later find out is true.
That seems very clear that they weren't taking it seriously.
It gets worse. The killer had a name at the time of the Southside Slayer, and this was kind of going on up till 85. But also, when the police did form a task force, they referred to these murders as the Strawberry Murders. Strawberry being slang for a woman who exchanges sex for drugs. So they finally get a task force, and it's biased and dismissive and shit.
Yeah, as if they needed to be any more clear that they didn't see these women as people or as worthy of caring about. That is horrendous.
Yeah, and it was really hard because Margaret Prescod is on this documentary, and she's like, you can't just as a Black person go into the police station and say, hey, I spotted something suspicious, or I have a tip or something, because the police aren't on our side. There's still massive police brutality. There's still this indifference to our community. So they did a lot of leafleting, which included being in the eventual killer's neighbourhood. And what was really shocking is just most people they were speaking to knew nothing about a serial killer who was targeting people who practically live around the corner, basically. there's another number thrown out here is by 86, 15 murders have been linked to the case. More detectives added the joint LAPD, LA County Sheriff's Department investigation, and it was called the Southside Slayer Task Force. Prescod formalised her group of activists as a community group and called them the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders in 86, and they raised more visibility and pressured the LA City Council to increase the reward money that they were offering for information on the killings from $10,000 to $25,000. She was just, concerned with ensuring that police and policymakers investigate the murderers and not malign the victims. And it was also in the media, the media was trivializing the victims. On the back of that, Margaret Prescod was trying to draw attention to the general lack of resources and neglect in South LA. The organisation wound down in the 1990s, but it was restarted in 2008 when the serial killer returned.
The same person?
Yeah. This is what's unusual about this serial killer is he took a break, but lots of people are saying he didn't take a break. He just changed his MO. So he just changed the manner of his killings so that he wouldn't get caught, that they wouldn't link, these are all the same person. At that time, by the 2000s, the crack epidemic was waning, but it was waning due to police brutality and punishing policies for these communities that were suffering. In 2002, there was 2 cases, another 2 murders, and their DNA results matched DNA from 8 of those 80s unsolved murders. So they've evidence that the serial killer is back again, or is just back to the MO or whatever. And Chief Bratton was the name of the chief of police at the time, and he thought about making a task force, but was dissuaded, apparently. So task force didn't form until 2007, so for 5 years they knew this guy was out murdering again and didn't form a task force. And they called the task force the 800 after the conference room they first gathered in. And this is where we get another awesome woman. This task force was small, it wasn't liaising with the press. So again, we're seeing a lot of the same pattern where it's just not providing people with the information that, there is a serial killer out there. You need to be careful. Also, please let us know any leads. We want to work with you as a community. None of that. So Christine Pelisek publishes an article about this task force because she finds out about it and she investigates it. And in 2008, she publishes her findings in the free local paper, the LA Weekly. And this is the breaking news in LA that, by the way, a serial killer has been on the loose in your area since 85. So her article included a scathing critique of how poorly the LAPD and the newly appointed mayor Antonio Villagrosa had handled it. There had been no press conference from the mayor, despite he recently weighed in on Lindsay Lohan's love life.
Wow. Wow. I wish the listeners could see my facial expression right now. I'm sure you know me, Grace. I'm sure you can imagine what face I'm making right now. Maybe I'll take a pic and put it on the Instagram.
Yeah.
So they were really going all out to brush this under the carpet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in this article by Christina Pelisek, she compared and contrasted this case to serial killers that were around in a similar time who were targeting white women, and those had been treated completely differently.
Yeah.
And this is so sad. This article was the first time many families of the victims knew that this was suspected to be the work of one killer.
So they just had no idea that they had no idea. Wow.
They hadn't even been told that. So she was the one who coined the name the Grim Sleeper because he had a 14-year hiatus, which is really bad.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the name. That makes sense. But they think that maybe actually he didn't, and maybe he was just doing something else in that time, attacking people in a different way.
Yeah. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe they just stopped running DNA tests on black sex workers and addicts. And that's the thing is his numbers could be in the hundreds, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In 2009, a familial DNA match came through. So one guy did a crime. His DNA pinged as being related to the person who'd done all these crimes. So police stalked out the guy and got DNA from a pizza crust and managed to arrest him. He was a bin man, so this to me is my worst nightmare, is someone who's in the service industry, like, or the utility industry, being someone like this, you know, that you would see every day, and that goes through your rubbish and probably knows you somewhat intimately and has a vague idea of your schedule, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, someone you should trust, you know, as, you know, like, femme-based trauma reaction. I get really nervous when, like, plumbers have to come to my house or anything like that, because I'm just like, it's such, you know, my true crime obsession is a trauma reaction where I'm just like, I'm sure if I know everything about it, I'll prevent it from happening. But it's just like, you know, these people aren't police checked. They're not, you know, they can be from any background, you know, and they're given these roles of responsibility and trust with vulnerable people. So yeah, and this is the 80s when, like, the dumps weren't really mechanized or sorted through. So he also had, like, the perfect job to dispose of bodies. There was no monitoring or anything like that in the dumps. In his house, they found 180 photos of missing, unidentified women. And he died in 2020. Good riddance. He died in his cell at 2020.
Wow. Okay, so he was convicted in the end.
Yes, so it went to trial, and the third woman I want to mention in this story is Anitra Washington. She was a survivor of one of his attacks. She was shot point blank in the chest, raped, and left for dead on the street. She fucking survived by pulling herself to a friend's house. She spent 3 weeks in hospital and had a year of procedures and therapy. And at his trial, she testified and identified him.
I love her. That's incredible.
So there's 10 known victims that he was tried for and found guilty of. And Wikipedia has a list of suspected victims. And like I said, the number could be over 100. But the 10 victims I also want to mention are Deborah Jackson, Henrietta Wright, Mary Lau, Bernita Sparks, Barbara Ware, Lucretia Jefferson, Monique Alexander, Princess Bertha Mew, Valerie McCorvey, Nisha Peters. Margaret Prescod is still being a badass, and she's the host and executive producer of a radio show which is named after the abolitionist and women's rights activist Sojourner Truth, who was mentioned last week as well. And of that radio show, she says it's a radio show to draw out how those of us most impacted, women, communities of colour and other communities, are responding, and discuss the interrelationship between art and politics and current affairs. She's on the executive board of the Centre for Study of Racism, Social Justice and Health at UCLA's Fielding School of Public Health. And that is the story of Margaret Prescod, Christina Pelisek and Anitra Washington, and the victims of the 90s crack cocaine crisis, systemic government and police disdain for black sex worker and addict lives, which were responsible for the prolific killings by the Grim Sleeper.
What a story. Yeah. But I love that she's still out there doing all this amazing stuff to this day. That's kind of wonderful.
It is. Something that, like, really stood out to me as well was just, and I think, again, it's this systemic racism thing where, you know, Margaret Prescod was responding very much from this grassroots thing and, like, get in there and inform the people and kind of, like, threw herself into the eye of the storm on a very direct ground level, compared to the very white story of Christina Pelisek of being able to approach this in a different way. You know, that I just wonder if race was a factor in Christina Pelisek being the person that was finally able to, like, get people to sit up and pay attention to this case.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been. It must have been a factor.
It's kind of like the traumatized people on the ground or grassroots and in there, unless they're acknowledged, and then people who are aware and they're also doing the right thing and doing a great job, but have a lot more privilege, are able to take this more umbrella view of it all, and they just quite often just get heard more, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need both. I think we need that real grassroots activism, and we also need the bigger picture stuff. But I wish that systemic privilege didn't play such a role in who gets to do which roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Margaret Prescod was as educated as Christina.
Yeah, but she just wasn't heard in the same way, wasn't listened to in the same way.
No, and I'm sure there still is a lot of privilege politics goes on in journalism, Jess. That's your area.
Oh, yeah, massively, and it's still a problem. It is still a problem. There are huge issues of race and of class and of gender and all of those things. Yeah, it's still happening in 2021. Absolutely, it looks different, but it's still happening.
So I think for me that was the big takeaway. The different ways in which these two women moved through the world and helped in different ways, and the different ways they were responded to and greeted and welcomed, even though they were making the same point. And something else that really impacts me as well with this Grim Sleeper guy is just believing women. So he had a previous conviction for raping a teenager in Germany. And it's just like, it's this story again.
Oh,
I feel women are
my God.
Yeah, women are blue in the face from telling, where it's just this guy is abusive and hits his wife around, and you're like, he is going to kill someone one day. He is going to escalate to doing worse. And it just not really being listened to or believed or preparations made for that,
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a definite pattern. There's an escalation.
There's so many instances where something like this will happen and someone will kill someone or will seriously harm someone, and it'll be this outcry of whoever could have seen that coming, and all these women are like, hi, we did.
Yeah, and it's just like, if there was people that listened to that woman and took it seriously and supported them to go to the police, if the police believed them and took it seriously, that could have prevented this from happening. And it feels the same with this. It's like there was so many points where this could have been taken more seriously and the murder of further women could have been prevented. And there's just this disgusting attitude towards it.
It didn't have to go as far as it did, and it didn't have to carry on for as long as it did. They could have done something, literally decades earlier.
Yeah. So
yeah, the system sucks. It sucked then and it still sucks now.
Yeah. It just sucks now, but with cute social media challenges.
Oh God, I'm laughing because it's true. When I think about my PhD research, for example, and the kind of deep dives into the Me Too movement that I've been doing, it's the patterns are so similar, and it still comes back to this disinclination towards believing women about their experiences and about their perceptions. And so much of it just comes back to this dismissal of what women say and how we describe our reality.
And the bystander effect, believing what you see and hear when it's happening yourself,
Yes.
I just know so many communities that someone within the community has been accused by more than one woman of being abusive, and everyone's just kind of still friends with him.
Yep.
And it's like, it didn't happen in a bubble. You've seen him say things, you've seen him do things, and, how red does that flag need to fucking get?
Right. Exactly. It's the missing stare effect, isn't it?
What's that?
Okay, I love this analogy. It came from a blog post that went viral must be about 10 years ago, and we'll pop the link in the show notes. But essentially what the author argued was that a person in a community who's known to be dangerous is like if you have a missing stair in your house, and every time someone comes around, you say, oh, just hop over the missing stair. Just remember to avoid it. We all just avoid it so we don't fall in. When it's like, actually, maybe you could just fix the damn stair. And obviously the analogy extends to the dangerous person is the missing stair. We all kind of work around them, but actually maybe we could just not keep making allowances for them.
My experience is you're lucky if you even get told about the stair and warned about it.
Yeah, also that. Yeah, that's fair.
I think that's optimistic.
Right, yeah, there's this real... And I've seen this play out so many times in different communities, and there's this sense that, oh, everyone just knows about that person. And it's like, well, does everyone know? Does everyone have the same access to the Whisper network? Because I'm not sure they do.
And there's also a level of, this has come up in my research about emotional abuse in polyamory communities, but there's also then a level of it's normalized by the Whisper network. It's normal for a stair not to be there. There's no step there. That's how it's meant to be. And that's just how it is. And anyone who falls down, it's kind of their own fault because they knew there was no step. You know, so it becomes this, like, group gaslighting similar to what you see in a cult.
Yeah, 100%. It becomes this, like, victim blaming en masse, essentially.
Yeah, like I said, it's this not okay normalization. So, it's Black History Month in the United States. And like I said, we're not making money. We're currently a bit in debt from this podcast. So, I was thinking of something.
We have currently invested our own money into this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was thinking about what is something that I could do for free that would be a good Black History Month thing. So I have made an Insta highlight called Black Lives Matter, and within it I've tagged some of my favourite threads and profiles to follow. I've got some Black and Irish profiles in there as well, and Black businesses to support. So that's on Instagram. And maybe we could do something similar with Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. We have like 4 followers on Twitter right now, and I think like most of them are people I know. But yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. I will pop some stuff up on the Twitter as well, and please follow us on there so that I'm not just talking to no one.
So engage with us if there's any amazing people of colour profiles you want us to like shout out. Let us know and we'll add it. And I think it's also just, I want to take some ownership over the fact that, you know, we're white women who are running this narrative and it's not ours to run. So yeah, I was thinking maybe for next week we could look at some women of colour podcasts to support, and people can check those out and get the story straight from the source instead of us retelling it.
Yes, we will find some recommendations and we will list them. Yes, that sounds good.
This is where we'd normally do a hometown heroine.
Yes, which, as I said, I was meant to do and I didn't. But yeah, if you know any cool people that we should know about, or some feminists in your hometown or doing cool things at the local grassroots level, please let us know. We want to shout them out. We want to tell everyone all about how amazing they are. Yeah, and feel free to nominate yourself as well. Like, if you're doing cool feminist things, don't be shy. Tell us about it. We want to make sure that everyone knows about it.
Yeah, and there's just now our basic bitch gratitude list.
I think it's your turn to go first.
I still can't say it without laughing. So I've been really stuck in the last while. I've just been really unable to like motivate myself to work or write or do anything. And that's shifted as of last night. So I feel really grateful for that. And I feel really grateful for my supports. Like last week I talked about therapy, but I also have really nice accountability buddies and friends that are just, you know, available and amazing and really help me. So I'm really grateful for that. And I just ordered this fucking stupid thing. Where is it? I've lost it already.
Tell me more. I must know more.
Obviously, it's COVID. I'm not working. I'm trying to save to move out. And so I'm just like ordering like 1 or 2 nice things for myself a month. And last month I ordered... It's the stupidest thing. I ordered...
I'm laughing and I don't even know what it is.
It's a coin and it says yes on one side and no on the other. So you flip it to make a decision. As a Libran, as that a basic bitch,
excellent.
That is what is raising, you know, that is what is deciding all my decisions from now.
That is excellent. I'm as an indecisive person, I'm very here for that, honestly.
What if it tells you to not drink coffee, though?
I would never ask it if I should drink coffee, because the answer to should I drink coffee is always yes. Literally, 2:00 in the morning, can't sleep, coffee, yes.
Have you ever done that activity? It was popular there in the early 90s where you had to say yes to everything for a week.
Oh dear God, no, that sounds awful. I'm just thinking about the sheer amount of things that I kind of have to say no to, because otherwise I would have no hours in the day. And my whole thing for 2021 has been getting better at saying no to people, particularly getting better at saying no to clients. Yeah, I'm literally just exhausted just thinking about saying yes to all of the things that I've been saying no to.
What about you, Jess? What's on your basic bitch gratitude list?
So I have a dear friend who, when outside of pandemic times, organises, and this is incredibly geeky, but I love it. It's so much fun. Organises like play reading socials where we all get together and essentially like just like cast a play and just read through it. And it's super, super fun. But they've been doing Zoom versions. So we did the first half of one last weekend and we're doing the second half tonight. And that's just been a really nice way to kind of reconnect with some of my friends and kind of get back into theatre a little bit, which is something that I really used to love and haven't had much time for in recent years. So that has been a real highlight of my week. Again, like I mentioned this last week, but I've been still trying to kind of get out for a walk most days, which has been really nice. Even if it's just like 20 minutes, going out and getting a little bit of sunshine has been doing my brain a lot of good. And I'm looking outside now and it's really nice and sunny, so I might actually head out for a little bit after we're done recording. Yeah, and the other thing that we did that was fun this week is my partner and I binged watched the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit. Have you seen it?
So good. I loved it.
So good. Yeah. It was amazing. Yeah.
Fucking day.
Okay, wow, well done. It took us a few days, but so we're figuring out what to watch next now. We've worked our way through. So when Styx and I got together, I had seen very little in the way of sci-fi, and particularly the kind of classic stuff that everyone has seen. I was that person who didn't see Star Wars until I was 27. So over the course of lockdown, we binged our way all the way through Star Trek The Next Generation and all the way through Deep Space Nine. And now we think we might binge watch Battlestar Galactica next, which I've also never seen.
Oh, yes. I've seen bits and pieces of that. Whenever I'm kind of one of these people, I'm not great at watching series, but there's lots of series like Battlestar Galactica where it's like any episode I have seen of it, I've really liked, you know?
Yeah, so he's slowly like educating me on all the things he thinks I should have seen, so that's one that we're probably going to watch next.
The cast is hotter in Stargate Atlantis, just FYI.
Good info, which I also have not seen.
I would really recommend seeing that. I could, oh god, what if that was my screensaver on my laptop frame?
Amazing. Have you watched or read anything interesting this week?
Nope.
Fair.
Like, oh my god, I've just been lying in bed, staring at my phone, scrolling through Reddit, like,
honestly,
what is life? Like, it's been really bad.
Honestly, we are in the plague times. That is entirely valid.
Yeah, so it's literally only yesterday I kind of broke out of it and was able to like do a bit of work. Yeah, it's just feeling massively fucking stuck and trapped inside my own body and my own head. Which, you know, is the joys of like, yeah, plague times and, you know, having, you know, depression and yeah, it sucks, but like,
yeah, I feel ya.
You know, I think my biggest thing in recovery has been acceptance, and I know I get runs like that and I always come back out of them. You know, and it's like right now, if I can't let myself just have a run of having a few days being stuck and sad, then when can I?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's better to do that, to be honest. I think it's better to just acknowledge that sometimes it happens and you'll probably come out of it quicker. I mean, I don't know. This is always my experience. I come out of it quicker if I don't try to fight it too hard.
Take your meds, people.
Yep, do that.
Yeah, take the store-bought happy hormones.
Yep, and give yourself a break.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for tuning in. And between now and the next episode, remember to fuck racist cops, fuck racist politicians, not in the way they'd like it, and love women.
See you next time.
Okay, goodbye. Ask me a question. I found my coin.
Oh, it's got to be a yes or no question, right?
Yeah.
Mine's gone blank. All I can think about is coffee.